Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. This week we are in Parshat Chukat. Parshat Chukat is a challenging parsha because in it we read of the deaths of both Miriam and Aaron HaKohen. So their deaths are described very differently. Miriam's is more just stated, and Aaron's talks about the whole transition of his son taking over, his son Eleazar being given the vestments, the clothing of the Kohen, and Aaron then going in, and it says, he was gathered, and we're going to talk about what that means to be gathered. So we're actually going to start with Aaron's death, and that is on page, hold on one second. Hold on one second. Page 847, which is chapter 20, verse 25, which is just the last two words on that page on page 847. And it says, take Aaron, and turning to the next page, and Eleazar his son, and bring them up to Mount Hor. Strip Aaron of his vestments. Now, when you say strip, it doesn't wasn't anything inappropriate. It means to take off his official vestments and dress Eleazar his son in them. Aaron shall be gathered in and die there. So Moshe did as Hashem commanded, and they ascended Mount Hor before the eyes of the entire assembly. Moshe stripped Aaron's garments from him and dressed Eleazar his son in them. Then Aaron died there on Mount Hor, and Moshe and Eleazar descended from the mountain. When the entire assembly saw that Aaron had perished, they wept for Aaron for 30 days, the entire house of Israel. So that Aaron was so beloved that the people cried for 30 days. So we're going to talk more about him and what his gift was. Many of us are familiar already with a lot of him, but we're going to talk about it more. But we want to talk about for a moment of what his death is considered to be. So you've heard the phrase, a kiss of death. And usually we think of that in a very negative way. It's like the kiss of death. It makes it sound like very negative. But it's actually a Jewish phrase. A kiss of death means to die by the kiss of Hashem. And that Hashem kisses the person. And just as Hashem breathed the life into Adam, Harishon, the first person, and that our life is breathed into us, that the kiss of death is almost like a mouth-to-mouth kiss, and the neshama is taken out of the person in a very beautiful, sweet, intimate way. And that's actually called dying by a kiss of Hashem. So unfortunately, it's gotten turned into a different meaning, but that's not what it means. So it says that Aaron died that way, and that is the death of people who are righteous. But it's a certain kind of righteousness. So it's described, it says that when someone passes from this world into the next world, if they were not overly connected to physicality and the materialism and identified solely as their body, but they identified as a soul who has a body, which is who we are and what we are, that then at death, the parting of the neshama from the body is considered to be, it's described as taking a hair out of a glass of milk. That just as you could pull a hair out of a glass of milk very easily, that's how the neshama of a person leaves this world, because they were not overly attached. A person who is overly attached and identifies as a body and at this world, and they're just in this world and they are very physically oriented, and that has been their focus. It says for that person, leaving this world is like pulling cotton out of thorns. So that if you were trying to take cotton, like a cotton balls, or just picture cotton and getting stuck on the thorns, like it doesn't want to leave because it's so attached. So it says that those are the two different kinds of deaths that are described. And obviously there's a continuum along between one way and the other. But to be able to pass from this world like Aaron And also Moshe passed away the same. So there's a question about, well, what about Miriam? Did she also get this kiss? So it says that for Snea's reason, that it's not really like considered appropriate to describe Hashem kissing Miriam in like an intimate way. It doesn't describe it like that, but that it was, that she too was in that same category. So Moshe, Miriam, and Aaron, who all are going to pass away before the Jewish people go into the land of Israel, all have the same kind of death. What does that look like to others? That's a really good question. I don't know. I don't know if that's something that's visible. I don't know. That's a really good question. Really good question, because obviously there's so many, it doesn't necessarily mean that the person's death is peaceful, because you can have somebody who is very righteous, whose death is actually horrific, painful, or terrible. And that's what we would see. What we wouldn't see is what their neshama's experience was in leaving that body. What does gathered in mean? So that is exactly what we want to talk about. What does gathered in mean? And notice the order that it says, going back to verse 26, strip Aaron of his vestments and dress Eleazar, his son, in them. So first, let's just pause for a moment. Aaron got to have nachas. He got to see his son be dressed as a Kohen Gadol. It's like what every parent wants to see is that their child follows in their footsteps. So it says this was big nachas for Aaron to be able to see that. And then it says Aaron shall be gathered in and die there. So we sometimes hear the phrase they were gathered to their ancestors. But usually we think of that as like they passed away and they were gathered to their ancestors. But here it says he was gathered and then he died. So the question is, what does that mean? So this was from I think this is from the beautiful shir from Rabbi Hajiaf. And he described it. He says that what this means is that when a person is about ready to pass into the next world, their relatives, their deceased relatives, come and they see them and they are gathered with their deceased relatives, who then basically kind of escort them. I always have to say, I get the scene from the end of Les Miserables, when Jean Valjean is getting ready to pass into the next world, and all the people who were in his life, what's her name, Fontaine, I don't remember, well, all the people that were in his life who he had helped all like came and kind of escort him up to like heaven. So it says that they come and they escort the person, and that's what it means to be gathered in. So gathered to the ancestors, and then the death happens, but that first he sees them. So I don't know if you have ever seen anybody who right before they passed away looked as if, or if they said something about like, I see my relative. So when my grandmother passed away, right before she passed away, she was like reaching for somebody. And she passed away right near her mother's yahrzeit. I'm named for her mother, and she passed away right near her mother's yahrzeit. And I'm like, she's reaching for her mother. It's like her mother came to get, it's like, it was so clear to me, her mother came to get her. And I don't know if other people have had that experience, but we wouldn't necessarily see that, but it's possible that one might have experienced that. Or you might hear somebody calling out to somebody as if they see that person and that person is there. Now, that could all be dismissed as, they have dementia or they have whatever, and it could be something else. But we understand it at a soul level that this person is being met by their relatives and their deceased relatives and escorted. So as the rabbi said, this is when you want to think about how good are your family relationships, that if you're like getting met by like, I thought I was done with this person, in this life, and now I'm going to be with them in the next life. So it's like good to kind of keep things clear and as good as possible. I'm assuming that it's like the good relationships that come and meet you. I don't have any more to contribute about that. I don't know. But that this is the understanding. So then it raises the question of like, what's our relationship with people who have passed away? So there's all sorts of understandings. There's a wide range of opinions about how aware people are in the next world of us, of what our comings and goings and what we're doing. Some say they are not aware. Some say they are aware. Some say they are aware, but they don't care, and not in a not caring, like I couldn't care less about them, but because they're in the world of truth, reality looks so different to them that they don't have the same response to what we would be experiencing here. On the other hand, we have the idea, and at a funeral, we ask that a person who has passed away, that they should be an advocate for us, and that they are involved and they are engaged in our lives. So when we say an advocate, it's not that we're worshiping them, but we see them as some sort of participating person in our life. So it's called a melitz yosher, that a person should be a good advocate for us. So we see that there is a role for somebody. We also know that when we do a mitzvah in somebody's memory, that is considered that they would be aware of that and have nachas. So when we do something, it should be an aliyah for their neshama, which, by the way, I wanted to say is I wanted to have our learning today to be in memory of Karen Diamond, who was the woman in Boulder who died from her terrible wounds from that terrible attack. So it should be, the word Karen is a Hebrew name, and it means ray, like a Karen or like of light. And diamond is also, it's a Yahalom, is one of the stones on the Choshen Mishpat, on the breastplate. So her light should go eternally, and it's just such a sad and tragic situation. But our learning today should be in her memory and should be an aliyah for her neshama, because we are in relationship with people who have passed away. The other time that we are considered to have a connection with somebody is on their yortzeit. During Shiva, of course, on the Shloshim, on the 30th day, when we put up a headstone, that there's a connection there with the neshama, and then on their yortzeit. And if somebody gets married and their parents or parents are no longer alive, the parents come to the chuppah. The parents come to the wedding. And there is a way that people kind of formally invite them verbally, but that they come for that. They come for that simcha and that nachas. So that there is a relationship. So the question is then, do we have a relationship? So now we just want to go back to Aaron and to Miriam. So Miriam also dies in this parsha, and when she dies, the water stops flowing. Miriam's well disappears and stops working, and then we have the very unfortunate circumstance where the people then are saying that they're thirsty, and they complain to God, and God doesn't get angry about that, but he tells Moshe and Aaron to speak to the rock, and it would give water for the people and for the animals. And this is the famous that Moshe hit the rock, and it's for that reason that Moshe and Aaron do not get to go in the land of Israel. We are not going to talk about that part. I'll just offer one thing, which said that it was one action, and there's like 25 reasons that are given for what was wrong with it, and what happened and why it doesn't get to go. And some of the commentators say is because so many different reasons are offered, it's as if it's not really the reason. It was more that it was meant to be. Moshe, Miriam, and Aaron were the leaders of the people, the generation that was in the desert. Their job was to get them from point A to point B, from Egypt to the land of Israel, not in. That was designated to be Joshua's job, not theirs. So they were destined to die in the desert, to be with all the people who died there, because kind of like to be with like the captains of the ship, to be with all the people who died in the midbar. And the other reasons were just kind of reasons. So I said it's kind of like when a child, a student, doesn't have their homework and they start offering 4,000 reasons why they don't have, my dog ate it, my computer wasn't working, my mother didn't tell me I was supposed to do it, all these things. And then in the end, the real reason was just because they didn't do it. So when you start seeing things with a whole lot of explanations, Okay, to get a lot of explanations, it really means then that that's not really the reason. That they're just like, we're just putting it up there to discuss it, something to learn from, but it's not the real reason. The real reason is, and you can see it in the gematria of the names, which I didn't write out, that the gematria of Moshe, Miriam, and Aaron all together is the same as Yetziat Mitzrayim, Exodus from Egypt, and Na'aseh v'nishma, we will say and we will do. Those were their responsibilities. And when you're done with your job, Aaron didn't die young either. He was 123. So he was not young. So it's not like they died young. And they had their role. So the question is, what was the impact of their lives? What was the gift that they gave? So I'm guessing that people are pretty familiar with this. We know that Miriam, it was the well of water, and that in her merit, the Jewish people had water for 40 years for several million people. And it says, like, what was it that she did that was so great? Because being the person who's responsible for the life-giving force of water, says, then you must have done something really amazing. And the answer that we're given is that basically she created the Jewish people. She brought life to them by being a midwife, by being the one who told her parents, you need to be together and keep having children. And then Moshe was born, that she was a midwife to the other Jewish women. And just speaking of being the midwife, so when the Jessie Wolf was telling us, this was public, so she was saying she went into labor during the 12 days of the Iranian attack. So she was in the hospital, and in the hospital, their area of bomb shelter wasn't a bomb shelter. It was the hallway of the hallways of the hospital. So she's in the hallway on the on the OB floor with a lot of other women who are in active labor, like freaking out, because who wants to really deliver a baby in the hallway with other women? Like one woman ended up like with a C-section, so she finally got a room. And Jessie said, that she was like screaming, like not in pain, but like demanding a room and an epidural, so she could get a room. So like imagine being like, this is under trying conditions, and this was like for 12 days. And then you have Miriam being the midwife and the person who's encouraging women for 80 years. Like this is like a very big job. She really created the Jewish people. Moshe led them once they were out, but Miriam created them in Egypt. And to be able to do that is like she was the ultimate life giver person who facilitated that. And life-giving force is like, what could be more than water? And we know her name also is Maryam, of bitter waters, or Marim, that she elevated people, and that she stood by the water for Moshe, that she led the women by the water, the splitting of the sea with tambourines, that she is basically a water life force. So the perfect reward for her is that. But what does that teach us? It says that we're, first of all, learn the power of what one person can accomplish, because she was one person who really took that leadership on. She wasn't elected. She wasn't appointed. She was self-motivated, and she just did it. And this characterizes a lot of the leadership in the Jewish world in general, is people just take initiative and they step forward and they do things. Down till today, like what people are doing is stepping forward and just doing things. And she did that. But her job was like on a very day-to-day, moment by moment. It says, just like water. It says that you can't go for too long without water. That what her brother's roles were very different, but that all three of them were important. And not in this week's parsha, but in the next week's parsha of Balak, that Balak, that the prophet Micah says, quoting God, I gave you Miriam, Moshe, and Aaron to lead you. I gave you the three of them. And that was the kind of like the triumvirate of the three of them to lead the Jewish people. But the leadership looked different. So when we think about like, what's my role? You could say that at some level that Miriam was like super babysitter. She was the person who was just there on a daily basis, encouraging people, have a family, have a child, it's okay, and comforting them if their baby boys were thrown into the Nile. How do you comfort somebody after that with their, they only have their daughters, they don't have their sons. So, did Miriam have kids? Yes. But I forget her child's name. Someone probably knows that. And I don't know how. Oh, so she died the same year as they all kind of died around the same time because it was toward the end. Parsha Chukat, this is already in the 40th year. We just kind of jumped and now we're at the end, because as soon as we get to the book of Devarim, of Deuteronomy, we're going to be in the last month of Moshe's life. So Miriam and Aaron die very close to each other. And she was, let's see, I don't remember. They were all kind of around the same age. She was older, but I don't remember how old she was, but she was also in her hundreds. So she was also not young. Someone else can probably look up the information. Let's see, I think Miriam was 8 when Moshe was born. So was probably died at 128, since Moshe was 120, and it's like around the same time. So that was Miriam's gift, but it points to that we can make our mark in an arena that seems like it would be not so significant, and that we give credit for that, and that we really take that seriously. And it's not just, the top jobs. Like if you ask kids what they want to be, and people say, "Oh, I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, whatever." People don't usually say, "I want to grow up and be a babysitter." Like that's what you do, like when you're, a teenager. But our society has definitions of what successful jobs are, and the Jewish world has a different definition of what successful. I won't even call them jobs, because it's not necessarily, she wasn't paid for it. It's not like, of course, neither was Moshe and neither was Aaron. So they weren't paid for these jobs. It's just what they did and how they dedicated their lives. So we are really supposed to have a broader understanding, and would probably be helpful if with our children and grandchildren or people we know, that we encourage a broader look at what constitutes a meaningful life and a meaningful accomplishment, rather than just keeping it into what our society has determined is important, significant, and worthy of comment and worthy of respect. So that's for Miriam. Now, the question is, what happened to Miriam's well? What happened to Miriam's well after the Jewish people came into the land of Israel? So I'm going to share the screen here and show you what they say. Hold on one second. Miriam's well. Okay, so according to the tradition, the Miriam's well went into the Sea of Galilee. And that there's those who say that if you stand in a certain place on a certain hill and look across where there are palm trees, that you can see it in the middle of the Kinneret, that you can see like what looks like a sieve. I don't know what that means, but that you can see some aspect of Miriam's well, and that there are some people who go and draw water from a well in the land of Israel, Motzei Shabbos, Saturday night, in order to be able to hope that the water from Miriam's well is flowing and will go into other well water to drink, and that it is curative. It's curative. It's also supposed to give you wisdom. And so that Miriam's well becomes something that we drink from. So on a less, esoteric level than this, though there are people who actually do this, and they will go, there's actually even direction I'll show you right here, where it says that he should climb. In the Talmud, it says the person who wants to see Miriam's well should climb to the top of Mount Carmel and look out at the Mediterranean Sea. That's one. And he will see a rock that looks like a sieve in the sea. And then there's other sources that say Miriam's well is in the Sea of Galilee, also known as the Kinneret. So these are different understandings, but the main idea is that the well is somehow still there and is still doing something, and that people can still access it. But what is it that we really should take from it is to drink from Miriam's well really means to drink from Miriam's wisdom, because water is always associated with Torah and the mother's Torah, because we're taught, do not forget the Torah of your mothers or the Musar, the character development of your father. That there's a mother's wisdom and there's father's wisdom. There's the mother's Torah and the father's Torah, and they are different. And the mother's Torah is to drink from Miriam's well, to drink from her water, is to imbibe what she stood for and to integrate that into our own lives, of that level of kindness and compassion, as well as having the vision and commitment and fortitude that Miriam had, and that is curative in and of itself. So that's what it means really to drink from the Miriam's well. So that's Miriam. We do not know where Miriam is buried, however. That information we don't have, but we do have for Aaron. First of all, it told us exactly where he was to be buried, because God is very specific and says, take Aaron and bring them up to Mount Hor. Now, the word Mount Hor doesn't tell you anything in English, but in Hebrew, it's really called Hor Hahar. Hor Hahar. Now, the word Hor is really the word Har. It's the same letters, Hey Resh. So it's really called the mountain on the mountain. Why is it called that? It says because the way the terrain looks, and this Rabbi Hajioff made a trip, because where is this? It's where everyone's buried, including Moshe. We don't know exactly where he is either, but Aaron we do know. And it's in Jordan, so it's like outside my window here, and it is near Petra. Okay, so where Aaron is buried is near Petra. It is I'm going to share my screen again, so I couldn't get a good picture to show the rugged steepness of the hold on a second, let me just get, okay. This is Aaron's tomb. This is up a huge mountain, very huge mountain. And then once you get to the top of the mountain, there's like another little mountain. It says like a cake with an apple on top. So there's a mountain and then a mountain on top of the mountain. Why? Which is why it's called Hor Hahar, like the mountain of the mountain. And it's up there, and it's actually considered an Islamic site. And so it has been protected for a long time. And because Aaron is considered one of the prophets who is revered when the Muslims are kind of paying attention to what their true beliefs are. So Aaron is respected, and you can go to his, not right now, but you can go to his grave, and people go there and they daven there, and they go there on his yort site. His yort site is the Rosh Chodesh Av. So Rosh Chodesh Av is when Aaron passes away. So that's when people tend to make a pilgrimage and go there. So I wouldn't be going there, just those steps alone there. I'm like, where's the railing and where's the broom, and cleaning up those steps because it looks too rocky and scary for me. But it's really in a very extreme place, very high up. So that's Aaron. So I just kind of didn't really know that. So if you go to Petra, you can actually go also in that same area is where Aaron is. So Aaron, what was in his merit? Aaron says that we had the Anane HaKavod, the clouds of glory that protected the Jewish people. And very interestingly, in this parsha, right after Aaron dies, it says the clouds of glory went away. And what happened? We started getting militarily attacked. And what kind of people after people came to do war with us. And because they saw that our protection wasn't there. So the Anane HaKavod was like our original Iron Dome. It was like that. The people did not mess with the Jewish people for those 40 years. And now we're at the end. And now like the groups are going to start coming to attack us, including the Amalekites disguised as Canaanites, the Amorites also coming to attack, and Og, the king of Bashan, comes to attack. So all these attacks are happening, and they come because the protection that Aaron gave is no longer there. So God is still protecting the people, but there is a vulnerability because our enemies see that we don't have the same protection, and so they take liberties with us. Thank God we're successful in the wars and we prevail. But one of the wars is very strange. So one of the wars, and we're going to turn to it and look at it because it would be a little bit of a gory movie, but we're going to talk about it anyway. Let's take a look at page 851. Page 851. This is chapter 21, verse 10. The children of Israel journeyed and encamped at Ovot. They journeyed, etc., 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 facing Moab towards the rising sun. Then they went and camped someplace else. And then they were someplace else, etc., and go to, excuse me, where it says, which is in the wilderness that juts out from the border of the Amorite. For Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorite. Therefore, it is said in the book of wars of Hashem, the gift of the sea of reeds and the rivers of Arnon, the outpouring of the rivers when it veered to dwell at Ar and leaned against the border of Moab. And from there to the well of which Hashem said to Moshe, assemble the people and I shall give them water. Then Israel sang this song. Does that sound like a familiar phrase? Then Israel sang this song. This is a redo, a little hint of the splitting of the sea. But rather than splitting of the sea, what the Jewish people are going to sing, because it says, come up a well, announce it. What is it that happened? It says that the Jewish people were going to be ambushed. And the people were hiding in the caves of these high mountains. And they were expecting to ambush the Jewish people. They were expecting the Jewish people to come down through the valley and that they were going to be in these caves and like come down on them and kill them. Jewish people didn't know anything about this. God actually had them go on a different route and they didn't get attacked, but God took care of, in a miraculous way, of killing the enemies. And what he did, he said that these caves, that there were protrusions and then there were caves, is that God moved the mountains like this and smashed and crushed all of the enemies who were hiding in the caves. Now, the Jews didn't know anything about this because they were on a different path. But God wanted them to know that he had saved them. So then he sent the well of water, the water from Miriam's well. He sent it like rushing down the valley, carrying the bodies of the people who had been killed, just like the Jewish people saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. And then the Jewish people were like, oh, wow. So it's like we here who are after the Iron Dome or whatever the things are that are defending us. And then we see afterwards how gigantic the missiles were and what the attacks were and how miraculous it is that more people were not killed. And it was like, oh my gosh, like if you didn't know, you wouldn't know. And God wanted them to know how they had been saved. So their response is to sing this song. So this is one of the 10 songs that we were taught that the Jewish people sing. And it's this song. Then Israel sang this song, come up a well, announce it. And then it goes on into like a description of the different wars and what happened. And some of it is like, I have not studied this. It was really kind of above my pay grade. So I just read about what had happened at the military level of God creating this miracle with the mountains and destroying those who were trying to destroy the Jewish people and wanting them to know it. Because there is an idea, it says that when you do a kindness for somebody, you should actually let them know because it builds a relationship. It says when it's tzedakah, then doing it anonymously is the ideal. But when it's chesed, and when it's a kindness or a favor or do something special for someone, you should actually let them know because it builds the relationship. So Hashem is looking also like, I'm going to tell them I did this. It's not like God needed accolades, but I want them to know so that they can appreciate how much I love them. So, and they respond with song. Yes. So what Cheryl is asking is about Aaron. So we'll come back to Aaron. Thank you. So this response of the Jewish people to the water says so that even after Miriam died, that the well of water was used as a tool, a vehicle for Hashem to do miraculous things for the Jewish people by having the water flow down, bring the bodies of the enemies who had been killed. And then we're going to come back to that in a moment, but we want to go back to Aaron. So we said, as far as Aaron, of what he did. So Aaron, we know, says that Aaron loved peace. He loved peace. He did not like people being b'machloket, of having disagreements and arguments, whether it was friends or husbands and wives, community members, and that's what he was devoted, is to bringing people together. So we can also look at these mountains coming together. So even though we don't have the Anane Hakavod, the protection, we have the quality of Aaron, which is to bring things together that need to be brought together for the purpose actually of peace. Even though it was destructive for our enemies, it was actually an act toward peace for the Jewish people. So the quality of Aaron, you could say, was a little similar to Miriam, that Miriam was about creating and generating life, and Aaron was removing obstacles to what was keeping people from having their lives together, because interrupting the relationship, that from his perspective and the Torah's perspective, is that all Jewish people are meant to love one another and to be close and connected. And that if they're not, it's an artificial barrier that is interfering with the relationship that needs to be removed, which is why he didn't have any compunction about what we would call saying something that wasn't true. If two people were not speaking to each other, that he would go to one and say, so and so, Cheryl she's so sorry. She really wants to be close to you. And then she would say, really? And then you should go to Carol, and Carol really wants to be close. And this way he would bring people together. And the people loved him for that. That you could say, well, what happens when they had the conversations? Like, did you tell Aaron that I wanted to be friends? Like, no, I didn't. I thought you did. You'd think like, well, they could get mad at him for saying something that wasn't true. But he said he did tell the truth, because the truth is the people did want to be together. And if there was something interfering, that was the falsehood. So from the higher truth is, actually the truth is you do want to be together. I'm telling the truth. The story you're telling yourself is that you don't want to be, that's the falsehood. So he was telling truth, and the truth of peace. And for that, the people loved him, which is why they mourned him for 30 days. And it doesn't say that about Miriam. Sadly, actually, Miriam, they took for granted. It says, like you take for granted the air you breathe, the water you drink, you don't think about it until it's gone. And so that after the well went dry, after Miriam passed away, then the people appreciated Miriam. So it's like how sometimes children are about their parents or anybody. It's very sweet. Our children are very appreciative, but our son Benjamin said, I have to, here he has, Baruch Hashem, 8 children. We had 2. He said, with each succeeding child, I'm just more grateful for what it means to be a parent. I'm like, I'm more impressed with you, but he's, that when you are in the roles, like then you can appreciate what it was that you received. So after Miriam died, then the people were like, oh. And then they were able to reconnect. Aaron, they had a more immediate sense because he was so actively involved in their lives and keeping the relationships together and keeping families together, friendships together. And so they cherished him more. When we think about, it's like we understand that these people live on, and that it's not just they live on in our hearts and they live on in our minds, but that their spiritual energy continues to nurture us, educate us, inform us, empower us, and that we have the ability to connect to them. So this week's parsha of Parsha Chukat is considered to be the ideal time to connect to both Miriam and Aaron in those special ways of nurturing others, of making peace with others, bringing people together, but even more than that, of the power of one person. So I didn't write down his name because I was listening to it in the car, and some of you may have heard about him. He just passed away fairly recently. There was a man who he had some sort, as a young person, he had a very, very serious life-threatening lung infection. And he required a lot of transfusions in order to live. And he made a full recovery. And he wanted to give back. And so he donated blood because that's what he had received. So he donated blood. Fast forward a number of years, there was some sort of a genetic thing, I think it was I don't know if it was in Australia, of babies who were dying. It was some sort of a blood mismatch between the mother and the baby, and it required a transfusion of a certain rare blood. And the rare blood was the blood type that this man had. He donated blood every single week for like 60 years, 50 years. He just recently passed away at 80 something, 90 something. Says, do you know how many people, the children who lived because of his blood donation? And that he took that on as his mission. I can save these babies' lives. So we don't even know what it is. You know, I wish we all came with like a fortune cookie. You know, you open it up and then you read like what it is. What am I supposed to do? It says, what's our tafkid? What is our purpose? What's my Miriam? What's my moment? What's my Aaron? It says, for most of us, it's whatever the mitzvah is that appears in front of us at the moment. That whatever the opportunity is, that's what we're supposed to do. And it doesn't have to be under the heading of one thing, like I am the Kohen Gadol, or I am Miriam the prophetess, or I am this person who gave the blood. It can be like I am a person who responds to my environment in a very open way and personal way and taking responsibility, because each of these people could have said, somebody else can do it. You know, somebody else can do it. Why does it have to be me? So stepping forward and being that person who volunteers that and doesn't wait to be appointed, elected, or anything hired, that these things were all done for no money, and yet they became the calling that people had. So, you know, we see the ongoing efforts that people are making here. I listened to a class by Sivan Rachav Meir, who is a very popular speaker here in Israel. And she brought this week specifically about what people do in memory of somebody. Two women, the one woman I remember more specifically, her husband was killed on October 7th. She's a widow now with children. And her husband's birthday, the husband who was killed, his birthday was this past week. And he was someone who took the mitzvah of kibud av v'em, of honoring his parents, very, very seriously. He talked to his parents or did something for them every single day, even if it was just for like 5 minutes. Called them, stopped by, brought over a little treat, checked in on them. And so she wanted, in memory of her husband, to invite people to do something if their parents are still alive, to do something for their parents or in their parents' memory on the birthday of her husband. So here's this person who I can imagine the suffering of what she's going through, and her focus is on how can I make my husband's memory ripple out into other people and have a more profound impact. And basically, when you think about Miriam and Aaron, it says the water, according to the Midrash, it says water, the wells, it says it wasn't just a well of water, like, you're picturing a drinking fountain. It said that actually there were like little rivulets, that like little rivers that went through the camp, because the Jewish people were spread over a very large area. And that the women had little boats. I'm just picturing little boats so they could go on these little rivers and go and visit their friends in other tribes, because they came from the tribe of Reuben and then they married into the tribe of Yehuda, but you want to go back and visit your aunts and uncles or whatever. And so there was a desire that the water was not just the water that gave them something to drink, it was the water of connection. It was the waters of connection. And the Anane HaKavod was also about protection and connection, of keeping everybody together and keeping everybody safe and within an embrace, like our sukkah, because our sukkah is a reminder of the Anane HaKavod, the clouds of glory. So if we look at really both of these people, they were manifesting in different ways of how to bring people together, create relationships, nurture people, and that is the mission of the Jewish people. So that when we follow in their footsteps, that's really what we're trying to do. So this week, between now and Shabbos, would be a good time to think of something maybe in the Aaron category or in the Miriam category, to do something like in their memory, and that will strengthen all of Am Yisrael. Because whatever we do affects everyone, because we are just one system. We are just really one being here, is the Jewish people. So even though this parsha has death in it, and the one I'm feeling so sad for is Moshe, the baby brother losing his older brother and sister. And some say that that's actually why he hit the rock, is in mourning for his sister. That, it was just kind of like, the water was her thing. And that he was frazzled. So one of many, 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 many explanations. But you just have to feel for him, that now he was hard enough leading the Jewish people, and now he's like doing it without his brother and sister, and it's just him. So it's a very deep, literally deep parsha, a lot of things going on, but to really take to heart what we can do in their memory, and knowing whether we get to Petra and Jordan and go climb up those mountains to Aaron's kever. Like, I'm not going there. It's interesting. The area where it is looks very much like our neighborhood here. So that's kind of funny, but I would never climb these mountains ever. So to be able to take to heart what they lived for, and to bring life to them as well, to their memories, and to strengthen the Jewish people, so that we can all live with more strength, with more nurturing, with more caring. And it's as if we bring the well of water and we bring the Anane HaKavod into our lives. Moshe, we do through bringing Torah into our lives, because he's the giver of Torah. So, and was the manna and the food that we ate, and we eat the words of Torah. So we have the words of Torah from Moshe, we have the clouds of glory from Aaron, and we have the well of water from Miriam. And we have people in our lives all the time who are doing things that are very sweet and meaningful, to be able to connect with people who have gone into the next world, because we stay in relationship with them. So when Aaron was gathered to his family, that he was reunited with Amram and with Yocheved and all of the others as well. And that when we reunite with our families, we want to give them nachas. So we want to be able to go and be with them and see them, and be able to have a reunion that is worth celebrating. So even though it is a parsha of death and dying, it is really more importantly about life and living, and with direction for us on how we could make our lives more meaningful as we stay connected to people in this world and the next. Have a good Shabbos, everybody. Thank you.
Happy anniversary to Ellen and Steve, staying connected.
Oh, how many years?
Happy anniversary.
Mazel tov. The anniversary. Mazel tov. Mazel tov.
If
How
you,
many years? Can we ask?
sure, yes, Baruch Hashem, 47.
Mem Zayin.
Mi-Tzion.
That's
Mi-Tzion.
wonderful.
So
What
we
you
were,
going, what are you
it's,
going to do?
so we had a very nice day. We actually, Chaya Meyer is in town, and so we got together with
Oh.
her.
Right. There was a nest they wrote me how they got to Israel was totally not planned. What I don't know the nest. What
Yes.
happened?
So it was like, one of these stories with all the tickets. So they ended up having to fly to LA and then fly from LA to Israel.
But they were
They
not planning at all. It happened suddenly. Did someone give them ticket? I don't know
No,
what
no.
happened.
I mean, they were planning because they were planning to come for the headstone for the Matzeva for Chaya's mother.
Ah, and there were no tickets.
I don't know all those details, but I just
Yeah.
know that if they were able to get here and they had the ceremony for the Matzeva for the headstone, and they have some other family things. So it was really great. So we brought her out to our home. So that was really nice. So that's what we did.
Wow, that's amazing. And Rabbi also was with her.
Yes.
He's in Israel, but he was at meetings at Aish Torah. So
Mhm.
we had Chaya to ourselves.
So she came alone. Wow. How
mean-
how long from Jerusalem is it?
I mean,
Half an-
we went to pick her up. So we
Oh,
picked her up.
that's so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Kolekavod. And they're staying
So-
till when, you know?
I think the 8th, they're going back on the 8th of
Because they
July.
have a son in Jerusalem, at least one.
They have a son and a daughter in Israel.
And a daughter. Which daughter is there?
Leah
Yeah.
Mm.
and Moshe is there too. So anyway, we had a very nice time. It was great to see her, and it was great to see all of you. Thank you for
Yasher Tov. So
Yeah.
inspiring.
Thank
Mazal tov.
And if I ever lead a trip to Aaron's grave, not happening, I'll be sure to let you know. I'll settle for the video. Even watching the video, I was watching it's like Lubavitch guys. Actually, it was very interesting. I'll just tell you, this was very interesting. It was from a number of years ago. Like a group of Lubavitch guys went to Aaron, so they're like dressed like white shirts and whatever, but they're wearing keffiyehs because just for the heat of the desert, because a long time ago that was like something that didn't mean anything. It was just like in the desert to protect your head. But now seeing that, it's like, whoa, like, because now it's a political statement. They would never be doing that. But it was just interesting. This was like from 7 years ago. So anyway, yeah, they went, and it's very, very rugged, very rugged. So
maybe like Masada, they will do a cable car, some kind of an elevator for us.
I don't think Jordan's looking to do that.
Right, it's Jordan.
It's Jordanian. They object to putting in an elevator at the hotel. So I don't think we're going to be having anything so soon. When Mashiach comes, maybe the land will flatten out and we'll be able to get there. So in the meantime, we'll follow in his footsteps, but we won't actually take the footsteps up to him.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you very much.
You can,
Bye, everyone.
Shabbos,
you
everyone.
can,
Bye,
if you
darling.
can,
Yeah.
yeah, please send me the link because it's a peacemaking parasha, so I can think of many people I can send it to.
Happy to.
Hint, 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 making peace.
Thank
Yeah.
you for joining
Father's
me.
yurt site on Friday.
I'm sorry, say that again.
My father's yurt site is on Friday, so
Oh,
it's very important. I'm so
beautiful.
glad.
Yeah, really.
I can't. What?
What was his name?
I'm Heschmeyer.
Heshmeyer. Okay.
Yeah.
It should be an aliyah for his neshama, everything you've learned and put into practice.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Helen, did
thank
you?
you.
Ellen, how many years is it today?
How many, what was that?
Years for you
Oh,
and
my-
Steve?
47.
Wow, mazel tov. Wow.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
Helen, did you
Mazel
record
tov.
the class?
Did I record the class?
Tודה רבה, אלן, תודה.
It will be on my page on the Jewish Experience, theje.com/Ellen. They put it up. I can't put it up. They put it up for me, and it should be up by tomorrow.
I've been to Petra and it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating.
So,
Okay.
all right.
All right.
Ladies,
Bye-bye. Thank you.
bye-bye.
Happy anniversary.
I'm sorry,
Love
Andy. Oh, thank you.
Steve,
Bye-bye.
happy anniversary.
Thank you.